Hey everybody, a couple of years ago I reviewed this model. This is an MTH Amtrak Genesis wearing a Phase 5 paint scheme, and it's a beautiful full O-scale model with lots of nice detailing, and overall it's a great locomotive. I love this thing. And by the way, I'm showing this to you for a very specific reason that'll become obvious in just a moment. Well, I've got another Amtrak Genesis here to show you. This one is smaller. This is a semi-scale Amtrak Genesis. This is the new Lionel Lionchief Plus 2.0 Amtrak Genesis to be exact, and we're going to check it out right now on Eric's Trains. Alright, so why did I show you that MTH Premier Line Genesis in the intro to this video? Well, it's because, believe it or not, this is also an MTH model, or it was. As many of you know, a couple of years ago, MTH sold a lot of their tooling to both Lionel and Atlas. Atlas bought their Premier Line Scale Genesis tooling, and in fact, later this year, they'll be coming out with their version of the Scale Genesis using that ex-MTH tooling, and I'll be reviewing one of those when it arrives. And then Lionel bought their semi-scale Rail King Genesis tooling, and here it sits, now a Lionchief Plus 2.0 model. So on the outside, it's pretty much exactly the same as the old Rail King Genesis. In fact, if you look on the bottom, you can see those MTH style inspection stickers that they used to use. And that's because these are being made in the exact same factory that MTH used. They're just being made for Lionel now. On the inside, however, it's a different story. They ripped out most of the MTH stuff and replaced it with Lionchief Plus 2.0, which is pretty cool. So in my mind, Lionchief Plus 2.0 is sort of a best of both worlds type of product line, because on the one hand, you've got the relative affordability of a smaller semi-scale model, and because it's semi-scale, it'll run on tighter curves that are typically associated with smaller layouts. And it's also got a lot less fine detailing compared to the more expensive counterparts. That means it's more rugged and better in the hands of kids. You can hit another train or derail it or have it fly off the track, and it might have a couple scratches, but it'll be okay. On the other hand, unlike a lot of other sort of entry-level trains that lack features, the Lionchief Plus 2.0 locomotives have a lot of features that some of the more expensive trains have. You've got electrocouplers, you've got nice lighting, there's a fan-driven smoke unit, you've got great sound effects, there's Bluetooth on board, and then you can run this with the Lionchief remote, the Lionchief app on your smartphone or tablet, or you can run it with TMCC or Legacy because it has built-in TMCC compatibility. And that to me is a huge bonus because that allows you to grow with the product. If you decide to build a layout and start buying more expensive Legacy-equipped engines, you can bring this right along with you because it'll run with TMCC or Legacy. And like I said, to me that's a big deal because it allows growth within the hobby. Anyway, let's take a look at some of the details and features on this model. We'll also open it up and check out what's inside, and then we'll wrap things up by taking this thing for a spin around the layout. Alright, so here on the front, starting at the bottom, we've got our die-cast metal pilot that has a plow and then some air hoses and a coupler cut bar cast into it as well. And then in the middle we've got our operating electro coupler. And then up here we've got a lot of cool stuff. We've got these nice MU details here. And then we've got operating ditch lights, which is great to see on a more budget-friendly model like this. And then we've got an operating headlight and operating marker lights. And there's also an operating backup light and operating marker lights on the rear of the unit as well. And then we've got the number board. It's not illuminated, but it is nicely done. And the front cab windows. There are no windshield wipers or any details like that. And that's expected on a more budget-friendly model like this. And although there are no details on the inside of the cab, it is illuminated in there. As we come around the corner, you can see one of the die-cast metal truck side frames, and you know, they're not going crazy with the details here, but for a more budget-friendly model, this is just fine. We've got a builder's plate here, and a molded-in little compartment here, and then we've got some great recessed detailing with these steps and the door handles. And while the door doesn't open or anything like that, it looks great because of this nice recessed detailing, and the same can be said for these handrails on either side of the door. Now, these are not add-on metal handrails, but they're so well executed that they almost look like the real thing. And then going down the side, we've got a little red fuel cap here, and molded in vent details that look pretty good. And then on the back corner, there's another door, and we've got more of those great looking recessed handrails. And then here's a look at the back where we've got one more electrocoupler, and like I said, we've got an operating backup light and operating marker lights back here. Up on the roof, we've got lots of molded in details. There's a little add-on horn, and then we've got the smokestack that goes down to the fan-driven smoke unit. And as always, to load smoke fluid into the smoke unit, you just pour the smoke fluid directly down the stack. And then back here, we've got a fan unit that's molded into the plastic as well. Here's a look at the underside. All 4 axles on this model are driven, and we've got 2 traction tires on the inner axle of each truck for a total of 4. We've got 2 pickup rollers per truck, and man, these are MTH style pickup rollers if I ever saw any. And then we've got a few switches under here. So right here is the run program switch if you want to use this with Legacy or TMCC. And then next to that is the Bluetooth on-off switch. And then up here is the smoke unit on-off switch. And while we're down here, let's go ahead and open this thing up and have a look inside. So there are 4 body screws. It's funny, I can tell these are MTH style screws. And there we go. So there's the 2 motors. There's the speaker for the sound system. And there's the control and soundboard and all that kind of stuff. There's the antenna up there attached to the roof. And there's our smoke unit. And then we've got this whole light cluster here and another cluster of lights back here. Looks pretty good, nice and clean. While I've got the body shell off, I want to show you something really cool. So ordinarily on most O-scale diesels, they put the speaker or speakers for the sound system down in the fuel tank, and then they'll have sort of a resonating chamber on top so that you get that nice boomy bass feel to the sound system. But on this model, there's no room for the speaker down here, and so they've got it back here just sitting out in the open. And so on its own, it's not going to have any ability to resonate and give you a lot of bass. So let me show you something. I'm going to power the engine up. And as you can hear, there's really nothing to the sound system right now. You can barely hear it. It's at full volume. But watch what happens when I put the body shell back on. Wow, what a difference. So they're actually using the entire body shell as sort of a bass resonating chamber. That's pretty cool. Take it off. You can barely hear it. You put it back on. And it sounds pretty darn good. It's really cool and very clever. Now, up until now, I've been running this thing with the Lionchief app on my smartphone, but I'm going to program this thing into my Legacy system just to show you guys how it's done. So on the underside of the locomotive, I'm going to put it into program mode. And we'll set it back down on the layout. I've got power on the track. And then on my Legacy remote, I'm going to put it in spot 1 and hit set. Now it's programmed. I'll take it off again and put it into run mode. And now it should be good to go. So I've got engine 1 and start. And by the way, you may have noticed on my Legacy remote that spot 1 is labeled Southern U30C. That's just because I had a previous locomotive programmed into this slot. I could just as easily rename it. Like that. All right, here's the horn, and you do get 5 pitches of horn to choose from. And the same is true for the bell. And lastly, here's a sampling of some of the crew talk sounds doing is that over the last few years, more and more they've been using female voices for the crew talk sounds, which I think is great because there are a lot of women who work in the railroad industry, and so it makes it all the more realistic to have female voices on these locomotives. In fact, the new Acela set, which I'll be putting out a review for that pretty soon, almost all the voices on that set are female, which I think is awesome. Anyway, here we go.
Engine to tower. I'm made up. Am I clear outbound? Over.
Stand by for track order. Out. 2635, and he won't be out of here for an hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, okay, alrighty. So call anyways, later on. Okay. Thank you. You are clear outbound. Out. 1676, move to 3077. 3077 on the main track. Coast this morning has one box checked. Number 2, over. Let me know as soon as 724 gets by. We ought to have a little time to do something. Alright, we'll call you right behind 724 then.
Engineer, train 3 to dispatch. Air test is complete. Can I move? Over.
Please stand by. Out.
Engine to dispatcher. Let me know when I'm clear. Over.
You are clear, Paul. Out.
Come in, dispatch. Ready for our priorities on 22. Over.
Hold for clearance. Out. You have a clear signal. You may depart. Out.
Air test is good. Ready to pull.
Okay, we're ready to roll it out, but before we do that, let me talk real quick about the passenger cars I'll be pulling behind this Genesis. And I'm going to turn the volume down just to make it easier to hear me. Okay, so as I said earlier, this is a semi-scale model. And Lionel makes some semi-scale Amfleet passenger cars to go with the Genesis. In fact, they have a set that includes a Genesis and 3 or 4 cars, and they're really nice cars, but I don't have any of those semi-scale Amfleet cars. What I do have are these gigantic full-scale 21-inch cars. And you can see that compared to the locomotive, they are gigantic. But these are full O-scale passenger cars, not semi-scale, and that's why they're so huge compared to the semi-scale Genesis. In comparison, here is a semi-scale car. As I said, I don't have any semi-scale Amtrak cars, but this is a semi-scale Santa Fe car, and you can see it's much better proportioned for the semi-scale Genesis. Now, I could run these behind the Genesis and it might look a little more in proportion, but these aren't the right road name, so I'm going to run the scale 21-inch Amtrak passenger cars behind this Genesis, so they will make the locomotive look a little out of proportion, but that's okay. And I figured it'd be a good test of the pulling power of this little semi-scale Genesis if it can pull all those huge, heavy, full-scale Amtrak cars. Anyway, with that said, let's go ahead and roll it out. Alright, so there you have it, the new Lionel Lionchief Plus 2.0 Genesis. This is a great little model. Now, as far as pricing goes, yeah, there has been some drama with the pricing in the last couple years. Surprise, surprise, there's been drama with the pricing of pretty much everything in the entire world for the last couple years. So in the 2021 Volume 2 catalog, the retail price on this model was right at $450, which I thought was pretty fair. In just the next catalog, the 2022 Volume 1 catalog, the retail price on this model jumped from $450 to $550. Yeah, that's quite a jump. Now, I'm sure some people are going to criticize Lionel for the price increase, even though they have no knowledge of the manufacturing business and what it takes to get these things made. But I've talked to some of the folks at Lionel, and they are just as concerned with the price increases as we are, but there's really nothing they can do about it. I mean, I've heard cases of some of the electrical components that go into these models having a 5-fold increase over the last couple years. And that means that the models are simply more expensive to make than they were even 1 or 2 years ago. And that's just the way things are. And it's not Lionel's fault. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. I mean, if you want to blame something, maybe blame COVID or blame inflation or blame the government. Either way, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. And just like you or me, Lionel is doing what it takes to survive. And like every other company out there, that means raising prices. Now, the good news is that if you go through a good Lionel dealer, they will likely give you a discount off that retail price, so you won't have to pay the full $550. You'll pay something a little less than that, and it will be a little easier to swallow. And as always, if you're looking for a good Lionel dealer, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can find them on the web at legacystation.com, or give them a call at 770-339-7780. If you'd like to support this channel, I would greatly appreciate it. That can be done through Patreon at patreon.com/ericstrains. Patreon supporters get all sorts of perks and benefits, and you can read about those benefits on my Patreon page. I'd like to put a big thank you out there to all of my current Patreon supporters. Your support means the world, not only to me, but to the future of this channel. And an extra big thank you goes out to my premium tier Patreon supporters. You'll see their names at the end of this video. And finally, if you'd like to buy an Eric's Trains t-shirt or anything else I might be selling, check out the Eric's Trains online store at ericstrains.com/store. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm Eric Siegel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.